I'm pretty stoked that we got the black jerseys.
We need to get your kickstand from the phone.
No.
I'm just going to hold it up.
Hey everyone, welcome to Mets Prospective presented by Verizon. Jacob Resnick here once again with Joe DeMayo. And Joe, we're coming up on the final week of the minor league season. We're starting to take a look back at all the exciting prospects we've touched on throughout the season. And Joe, we should probably start with the two players we get asked about the most in our mailbag segment, and that's of course Francisco Alvarez and Ronny Mauricio. Joe, let's kick it off with Alvarez. He's far and away the Mets' #1 prospect. But looking back, how would you kind of categorize his 2021 season?
To me, it's just a very impressive season from a 19-year-old catcher playing in a league where he's 3 years younger than the average player in his league. And what really impressed me is the fact that he seemingly hit a wall in July where he, started to struggle, and that is somewhat expected for a guy that is doing his first full professional season, but he picked it right back up. And, I think that showed some good resiliency. And I know that the Mets have been quite impressed with his growth behind the plate, which is a huge plus because obviously the catching part of the game comes along a little slower than the offensive side typically. But how could you not be excited about the bat of Francisco Alvarez? I mean, he's hitting home runs to the Cyclone roller coaster in Brooklyn. This is 70 grade power, I've been told, for raw power. So this is a plus bat who's making improvements behind the plate. And, you surely can see why some other outlets are ranking him inside of the top 10 prospects in all of baseball.
One thing you always have to look at with prospects is how do they bounce back from a rough patch, because it's baseball. Everyone is going to go through it at some point. But when you see a player like Alvarez get stronger as the year goes on, like you mentioned, hitting those mammoth home runs in Brooklyn, which is certainly not easy to do, you only get more excited for what the future holds for him. Now, the other name who was in Brooklyn and recently got promoted to AA Binghamton is shortstop Ronny Mauricio. When we talked to his bench coach with the Cyclones, Mariano Duncan, a couple of weeks ago, he said that he's never seen that much talent in that position at shortstop in his 38 years in baseball. Definitely a high praise for sure. But Joe, has Mauricio, and remember he's just 20 years old, has he lived up to the hype in your opinion that has seemingly never left him since the Mets first signed him a few years ago?
He really is making great progression. Of course, he's physically matured into his body and the power output is there. I mean, he's about to hit 20 home runs for the season. Drawing walks to me is something that he still has to work on. Though over the last couple weeks, he's significantly increased his walk rate. So it might be a sign that he's starting to recognize pitches a little better. And you're seeing the strikeout rate dip a bit. It's just going to be very interesting to see where he ends up on the diamond defensively long-term, obviously with Francisco Lindor in the fold. But yeah, I think Ronnie's made some serious strides. He's got some things he still needs to work on, but as a 20-year-old kid, you have to be satisfied with the year that he had.
Yeah, I think you have to look at this year as a step in the right direction for him. Was it a huge step? You could go either way. In the grand scheme of things, like you said, he still has a long way to go. He'll be on the 40-man roster this offseason and going into next year, but he's not really at that point that most guys are where they're on the 40-man and close to major league ready. He still has a ways to go. And obviously it's hard to look at the home run numbers and the exit velocities up there in the high triple digits and not get excited, but still having trouble with the breaking pitches. The defensive focus comes and goes. We know he's working hard. We talked to Mariano Duncan, like we mentioned, about how hard he's working on and off the field, but the tools are there, and patience is going to be key with Ronnie. Now, one Mets prospect we've touched on a bit over the last few months, but never really spent a great deal of time on, is third baseman Mark Vientos. He was the Mets' second-round pick back in 2017 out of high school in Florida. And just recently, Vientos was promoted from AA Binghamton, where he hit 22 home runs, to Triple-A Syracuse. And Joe, when we talked to Mets scouting director Tommy Tahanis earlier in the year, he said that nobody in the system hits the ball harder and more consistently than Vientos. What else has both you and the organization so excited about him?
Mark Vientos has really become a much more complete hitter in 2021. In 2019 in low A, he still showed off that power, the plus power that he possesses, but there was some contact issues and he wasn't really drawing walks, and skipping high A entirely and going straight to double A, which is really kind of the barrier. Like single A to double A is the biggest jump in the minor leagues, and after a bit of a tough start, he turned it on and absolutely lit up AA. And to me, it's a bat that's going to be able to hit for some average, and then the power is just ridiculous to all fields. It's a 25 to 30 home run bat, in my opinion, once fully matures and gets everything put together. It's a big growth from Vientos for a guy that coming into the spring, I knew the upside was there, but I wanted to see him put it all together at that upper level, and he certainly has.
Yeah, and I think it's worth emphasizing that Vientos just played nearly a full season of AA at the same age that most minor leaguers coming out of college start their careers at. He's now 4 years removed from getting drafted. So the fact that he's not just survived, but thrived against much older competition, much more experienced competition, really can't be understated. The Mets have really only had one player over the last decade and a half, when you look back on it, to perform this well at this age in AA, and that's Dominic Smith when he was in Binghamton. They're different players offensively, but it's possible that Vientos ultimately follows that same path of moving from a corner infield spot to a corner outfield spot, and he's been working on that all season. There's still a lot of time for him to keep working at the hot corner, but certainly a lot to like, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Never stops hitting the ball hard. Our guest this week is Syracuse Mets third baseman Mark Vientos. Looking back a few years now, you were one of the youngest players in your draft class when the Mets took you in 2017. Played your first pro season as a 17-year-old. Looking back now, 4 years later, how you kind of balanced developing as a player, making baseball your full-time job?
Definitely, at 17 years old, I had to learn. I had to grow up quick because I was so used to living at home with my parents, and honestly, my parents were doing a lot for me back when I was in high school, so I had to grow up quick, and I think I got comfortable with the process of being a professional baseball player, and it's been good to me ever since, just enjoying every moment.
One of those big moments of your career was this past spring, getting the invite to Major League Spring Training for the first time. What influence did that have on your season?
That had a big influence in my season, just personally, just learning from all the veteran players that I was with, and veteran guys in the locker room asking questions, picking their brains. You had Lindor, Pete, Conforto, just asking them questions that I always would wonder, and how they go about their business. Lindor, I had a good conversation actually with him, asking him like, what's like the biggest advice he could give me, a young player, and it was just know that you belong wherever you go. It could be in the major leagues, it could be AAA, AA. Just know that you belong. You gotta be confident in your ability at all times.
You and fellow top prospect Brett Baty were both drafted as third baseman and played together this year with AA. And both of you have split some time in left field as well as third base. What's the relationship been like for you and Brett Baty over this past year?
Me and Brett have a great relationship. I mean, especially that we're learning two different positions now. We try to ask each other questions, trying to pick each other's brains always, especially playing left field for the first time. Like, it's a very great like relationship when it comes to like, he knows what we're kind of like in similar situations right now, so like us picking each other's brain. He's a great player.
How comfortable have you gotten in left field this year, and how important do you think having that versatility will be for your major league future?
I see it as a big opportunity to learn different positions, because whatever I could do to stay in the major league lineup is a plus. If I could play multiple positions so I could stay in that lineup, that'd be awesome. I'm learning left field, and I could say I'm getting better and better every day as I play out there, just getting more reps. And the more reps I get, the better I'm gonna get, honestly.
When was the last time that you had like taken fly balls before they started to move you this year?
Probably never, honestly. I've never played outfield until this year. Like I said, I just gotta take everything day by day and keep working hard, keep my head down, and keep learning.
Really great stuff from Mark in that interview, and you can tell he's been working very hard all season long. And had to learn a new position this year, and that was because Brett Baty plays the same position at third base, kind of forcing both of them to learn left field, and they were kind of switching back and forth in Binghamton. And Joe, how do you kind of see that unfolding as we get into next year when they're likely to meet up again in Triple-A and even further down the line if they both reach the major leagues at the same time?
It's going to be very interesting to see who ends up where. I believe that current day Brett Baty is a better third baseman than Mark Vientos is. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they position these guys. Because as you said, I would expect both of them to start the 2022 season in Triple-A Syracuse, where we'll be playing the same game again. Who's the third baseman? Who's the left fielder? But I think just having that versatility with both of them is really only going to help their careers going forward. And it's going to be super, super interesting to see how the 2022 season unfolds, because when they're in Triple-A, they're simply a call away from the major leagues. Third base and left field are certainly two positions that I think are in flux for the New York Mets.
All right, that's going to do it for us this week. Make sure to catch us next week for our final Mets Perspective episode of the season. For Joe DeMayo, I'm Jacob Resnick. We'll see you next time.
See the Mets of tomorrow play today. The Brooklyn Cyclones play baseball on the beach all summer long. Visit brooklyncyclones.com/tickets.